Friends, shall we stand for prayers and debout pour la prière? I will begin with a plea to chant for St. Lucia. It's a prayer. Marseille meno, nuit comme jour moins qu'appelé ouais. Marseille meno, nuit comme jour moins qu'appelé ouais. C'est oui un ange qui vient consoler moi, c'est oui un ange qui vient consoler moi. Au nom du Père, du Fils et du Saint-Esprit, ainsi soit-il. Papa bon Dieu, aujourd'hui nous venons ensemble pour nous ça, honorer et glorifier. Papa nous a pleurer pour payer nous, papa. Nous avons pleurer pour la peine qui a payé nous, pour souffrance, pour crime, pour mal comprendre. Mais papa nous a glorifié puisqu'il nous a joie en chaîne aussi, puisqu'il a célébré l'anniversaire d'indépendance. Et que nous avons une lumière qui a guidé nous, papa. Nous avons continuer à bénir nous en cet ici pour nous salir l'espoir, pour nous salir la foi, pour nous salir l'amitié, l'amour. Et que malgré nous ni tristesse, mais pour nous salir l'esprit qui s'est débattu et puis détruit crime et mauvaiseté. Papa, nous avons pour bénir le gouvernement, nous, papa. Bénir tout le monde qui a conduit le pays, ça là. La sagesse là, puis ça guide la nation, ça là, à la direction qu'a pris. Papa, nous remercions pour cesser nous. Louise, Matrin, Sérieux. Papa, nous remercions pour Don Zabalia. Don Zabalia, puis ça écrit l'histoire nous. Pour aider nous pour ça comprendre côté nous sortir. Et pour nous savoir guider sur côté nous aller. Papa, bénis tous ces écrivains en Saint-Ici, tous ces gens qui ont levé nous haut en Saint-Ici. En saison indépendance, ça là, nous en anniversaire indépendance, ça là, papa, nous sommes pour toucher toutes ces jeunesses-là. Puis, ça ni l'esprit, puis, ça, qu'on écrivain aussi. Puis, ça matche l'histoire, nous. Matche poésie. Tout ça, nous dit, papa, nous remercions, nous honorons pour bel petit pays, ça, non, papa. Un bel petit pays. Où ça bénit nous, et puis, papa. Continuez à bénir nous comme nation. J'étais miséricorde sur nous en tant qu'à ça là, papa. Touchez chez nous pour nous repentir notre péché. Et puis quittez nous, on a et puis glorifier. Bénis nous après-midi, papa, ti séance salanuia, ti réunion là, qui te laisse pour guider nous. Qu'a fait prier ça, papa, en nom de notre Seigneur Jésus-Christ, en l'union du Saint-Esprit, ainsi soit-il. Au nom du Père et du Fils et du Saint-Esprit, ainsi soit-il. And perhaps I should say a prayer in English because we are bilingual, so I will say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Let the people say, amen. Let the people say, amen. Amen.
You may be seated. Cabinet Secretary and Chairman of the National Independence Committee, Auguste de Gazon. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Climate Change, Bradley St. Ange. Executive Director of the Cultural Development Foundation, Mrs. Ramona Henry Wynn. Director, Internationalization, Advancements and Partnerships at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Mrs. Tracy Pilgrim George. Librarian at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Hunter J. Francois Library, Mrs. Kathy Butch McDiarmid. Founder of the Folk Research Center, Monsignor Patrick Anthony. Chairman of the FRC, Mr. Ember Charles. FRC Librarian, Catherine Octave Isaac. Chief Archivist, National Archives Authority of St. Lucia, Patrick Freeman. General Secretary, St. Lucia National Commission for UNESCO, Marcia Symphorium. Reviewers and graphic designers of the book. Widow of the late great St. Lucian historian Gregor Williams, Deidre Williams. Facilitating partners and their representatives of the National Independence Committee. Lucilec, Wax Leathers, Teddy Auto, Eagle Freight, Southwell Stores, family, members of the media, other specially invited guests, bienvenue. Welcome to the official book launch of On the Shoulder of Peasants, a collaborative not-for-profit endeavor between From Classroom to Community and St. Lucian author Louise Maffrey-Seri, part of the 47th Independence Calendar of Events for St. Lucia. I am Raisa Joseph, founder of From Classroom to Community and director of today's proceedings. Pita toupe di, ki manye deklarasyon di yo liv nef important pou ede pa de sent nisi. Informasyon ebe la connaissance ka gouverne la te. The stories that are told in the daily news about our lives and our nation's history matter. They shape identity, they can empower, and they can also disempower. It was both divine and significant that a book rooted in celebrating the St. Lucian, peasant and person, centered on agricultural and economic development in St. Lucian history, was written and published before the official independence theme was released to the public in 2026. The theme which guides us this year is Devant ensemble, nourishing our nation, strengthening our people. Nou iti pou pep nou, fortifier nation nou. It forces us to ask these important questions. Who has and continues to nourish the nation and the people? Can a nation be nourished if people are not fed, and I dare say healthily? What is truly the foundation of sustainable and robust economic development? And how do we care for those who nourish and strengthen the nation, from the peasant to the farmer and the fisherman? A chaitel and nou reflechi a sou development sent nisi, nou ka chanje pi pale a sou te green gold, kote fig te lo, epi ede pousse epi epouve komin la epi nasyo a. Men sa se yon chapit de l'histoire nou. Kosa jodi a bien ponta pou nou iti kachil nou. And among our various objectives, this book launch seeks to highlight that substantive independent development relies on the toil of people who put food on our tables so that we can survive and thrive individually and collectively, and they must not remain invisible in our national development, recognition, and reflection. History holds important lessons about who we are and what we can become. And in moments of crisis, it provides important wisdom for strategic action. And from classroom to community and the author, it is part of a commitment and a responsibility to our community. We have a duty to share the history and knowledge that we receive, and to remind ourselves that the community itself is an important classroom for learning. With this, we welcome you, and I invite you to view a brief infographic, which will be followed by a special presentation.
The peasantry in St. Lucia drew special attention by the 1890s. The West India Royal Commission of 1897, in their report, had identified the large, productive peasant sector of St. Lucia as creating a special case in the region. It was repeatedly pointed out that, and I quote, the commissioners promised to give the case of the St. Lucia peasant their special consideration, as they concluded that St. Lucia stands in a far different light from the other islands visited by them. End quote. This came amidst several assertions by contemporaries that the peasants in St. Lucia were an especially industrious and fast-growing group whose economic contribution to the country required special attention. Further, the editorial of an 1898 newspaper published in St. Lucia, Daylight, emphasized that While the sugar planters are thus positioned, there is another class of workers in our midst whose cause at present requires our assistance and support. We refer to the peasant proprietors. It is impossible to overestimate the value as a factor in the agricultural advancement and general well-being of the island of this class of workers. They are the body of toilers whose labor carry with them the tripartite blessing of wealth, peace, and contentment. The peasantry in St. Lucia drew special attention by the 1890s. The West India Royal Commission of 1897, in their report, had identified the large, productive peasant sector of St. Lucia as creating a special case in the region. It was repeatedly pointed out that, and I quote, "The commissioners promised to give the case of the St. Lucia peasant their special consideration, as they concluded that St. Lucia stands in a far different light from the other islands visited by them." End quote. This came amidst several assertions by contemporaries that the peasants in St. Lucia were an especially industrious and fast-growing group whose economic contribution to the country required special attention. Further, the editorial of an 1898 newspaper published in St. Lucia, Daylight, emphasized that, while the sugar planters are thus positioned, there is another class of workers in our midst whose cause at present requires our assistance and support. We refer to the peasant proprietors. It is impossible to overestimate the value as a factor in the agricultural advancement and general well-being of the island of this class of workers. They are the body of toilers whose labor carry with them the tripartite blessing of wealth, peace, and contentment. The peasantry in St. Lucia drew special attention by the 1890s. The West India Royal Commission of 1897, in their report, had identified the large, productive peasant sector of St. Lucia as creating a special case in the region. It was repeatedly pointed out that, and I quote, "The commissioners promised to give the case of the St. Lucia peasant their special consideration, as they concluded that St. Lucia stands in a far different light from the other islands visited by them." End quote. This came amidst several assertions by contemporaries that the peasants in St. Lucia were an especially industrious and fast-growing group whose economic contribution to the country required special attention. Further, the editorial of an 1898 newspaper published in St. Lucia, Daylight, emphasized that, while the sugar planters are thus positioned, there is another class of workers in our midst whose cause at present requires our assistance and support. We refer to the peasant proprietors. It is impossible to overestimate the value as a factor in the agricultural advancement and general well-being of the island of this class of workers. They are the body of toilers whose labor carry with them the tripartite blessing of wealth, peace, and contentment.
Splendid performance. We put our hands together. The performance we just listened to, captivating, riveting, was called La Plica Nuishi, the Nourishing Rain, and it was performed by the SALCC Kappa student drummers. So these are our students who are done extremely well, not just academically, but culturally. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome, to help situate us into the importance of this book, SALCC librarian, Mrs. Kathy Butch McDiamond. Please help me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Raisa. Pleasant good afternoon, everyone. I must say, when I was invited to speak today, I reflected on why a librarian was being asked to give remarks, but that reflection was very short-lived. So I think it's important to situate this. Book launches, as we know, celebrate authors. Certainly, but if you think about it, they should also celebrate the journey of a work beyond its writing, into collections, classrooms, communities, and conversations. That is where libraries stand. We connect people to ideas, and we ensure that important works like Louise's continue to live, circulate, and shape thoughts, our thoughts, long after the applause fades. So I must thank Raisa Joseph for reaching out to me to offer some brief remarks today. As we commemorate the 47th year of our independence, it feels good and right to celebrate on the shoulders of peasants by St. Lucian historian Louise Matre Serrier. This is a work that challenges us to look again at a group often simplified in our narratives and to recognize their central role in shaping St. Lucia's agricultural and economic history. On the Shoulders of Peasants brings attention to a group we too often overlook in our national story. It encourages us to see the peasantry not as a side note, but as hardworking and resourceful people who helped shape our St. Lucia. Louise grounds her work in research and evidence, showing how rural communities supported families, strengthened local economies, and influenced the country's path over time. That careful attention to evidence makes this text especially valuable for our students, scholars, and researchers. From a library perspective, I want to highlight 3 things, and you know I must speak from a librarian's perspective. First, libraries preserve our national memory. At the Hunter J. Fasua Library, the main academic library serving the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, we are proud to host a growing special collection of St. Lucian literature, one that everyone is invited to use and indulge in. To date, we hold 20 history titles written by St. Lucians and about St. Lucia. Each one strengthens the record of who we are as a people and how we understand ourselves. Second, libraries extend the reach of authors. A book does not end with a publication. Through cataloging, reading lists, research guides, displays, exhibitions, and programming, libraries ensure that scholarship enters classrooms and public conversation. In addition to our print collection, I must tell you, we also maintain a remotely accessible local database curated by librarians with over 500 articles and resources focused on St. Lucian content. This allows our students, researchers, and members of the public to engage with local scholarship wherever they are. So if you have local research, we welcome it into our collections because, again, it's remotely accessible by a huge audience. Third, libraries help build intellectual confidence. When our students encounter scholarship produced by St. Lucians, they see their country not as a footnote in someone else's narrative, but as a subject worthy of rigorous study. That matters. It should matter. It strengthens our identity, ownership, and critical thinking. It is also why initiatives like our Writers in the Spotlight Book Fair is so important. At that event, we featured over 40 St. Lucian authors, including Louise, who I met for the very first time, placing their works at the center of academic and public attention. When we intentionally highlight our writers, we affirm that their scholarship belongs in our classrooms, our libraries, and in our national conversations. The work has relevance beyond the classroom as well. For economists and policymakers, understanding how grassroots enterprise functioned historically offers insight into present-day challenges and opportunities. There are lessons here about resilience, sustainability, and local production that remain deeply relevant. So we invite authors and researchers to submit their works to the Hunter J. Fasua Library, as well as our national archives, if we wish others to share in their knowledge. Libraries thrive when scholars partner with us. Together, one ecosystem, we ensure that our research, which we cannot do without our writers and our authors, is preserved and actively used. Louise Martres-Serrier has made an important contribution to the study of St. Lucian and Caribbean history. As a librarian, I'm particularly pleased that this work now forms part of our Sir Arthur Lewis Community College's collection, where it will continue to inform, challenge, and enrich scholarship for years to come. So congratulations, Louise, and thank you for strengthening our national scholarship.
Thank you immensely for that poignant reflection. And as someone who currently lectures in history, I can tell you that I have used the book. since receiving it, because very often when you hear about the peasantry in the Caribbean, you might hear about Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica, but there is little to no information on St. Lucia. And so it's so important for students when they study history to think that history also involves them too, so they can see what is the connection between themselves and St. Lucia. Because nous savons que c'est bien important pour étudier cette ici. At this time, we're going to get into a brief snippet from the book, because the theme is nourishing our people to strengthen our nation. I cannot give you a full meal, but I'm going to give you a tigute of some of the information that you can find in this book that you will purchase, God willing. So, one of the reflections looks at the banana industry. And most of the times we've actually focused solely on green gold and the benefits, but we have not looked essentially at some of the challenges. And one of the infographics that you will see on screen for our viewing audience indicates when the banana industry was considered in the 1920s, it was believed that the island could not produce enough bananas for profitable trade. By 1938, St. Lucia was producing over 50,000 stems of short-ship bananas, that is more bananas than shipping. So la tenye yo te kwen nou pati sa podwi ase fig. Ek nou moutre yo nou podwi fig telman yo di nou sa se ase. Nou ni pou do bout. So this book provides these kinds of meaningful insights to understand the development, the challenges of the agricultural industry, and what the St. Lucian person is capable of. At this time, it is more than fitting to introduce to you the individual responsible for us being here today, whose research and passion for history shows in so much of her life and in this book that was produced. Louise Maffray-Serrier is a St. Lucian historian and research consultant. She is passionate about the use of research and data in giving a voice to the lived experiences of ordinary people and their historical contributions to shaping St. Lucia's economic and social landscape. While working to complete her MPhil in history, she wrote her thesis, Economic Diversification in St. Lucia, 1897 to 1945, in which she uncovered new findings about St. Lucia's agricultural economy. Her work has been published in the Journal of Caribbean History, and she has presented her findings in conferences in London, Liverpool, Birmingham, Trinidad and Tobago, and St. Lucia. She also holds a Bachelor in Economics and History, a double major, first-class honors, and an MPhil in Economic History. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, nous bienvenue Louise Maffray-Serrier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Protocol having already been established, let me just say a really great thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you to Raisa for this really great introduction. I want to make one correction. Raisa said we want to speak to we want to hear from the individual responsible for us being here today. But I think I could point to Raisa as another individual who is responsible for us being here today. She has worked tirelessly through her organization from classroom to community to not only have us as part of the Independence calendar. So can we just give her some thanks quickly? Yes. So I'm going to go right into it because I know I have a time limit. A few days ago, a friend of mine asked me whether the book was about my grandmother, Vyra, who was also a friend of hers. And I told her, yes, you can say so. She farmed, she sold produce, she made clothes, she baked goods in a stone oven outside in the yard. She made coconut oil, cassava, castor oil, sold right here at the Castries Market, and along with my grandfather, worked to ensure that the 11 children were well cared for. So yes and no. The story is about her, but also about my other grandmother, Mercy Sin, who sold her homemade sweets in Monrepo, and as well as all of our grandmothers and grandfathers and great-grandparents and so on, who plied their trade in one way or another. So it is in honor of all of our ancestors. That is why we are here today. In honor of all of the people who worked tirelessly, who felt that it was not enough to simply survive the years that followed post-emancipation St. Lucia, but it was critical to thrive And in so doing, they built the foundation of the St. Lucia that we know today, an independent nation. So I started this work as a search for answers about how our economy developed over time and what we could learn from the rise and fall of the various industries. I definitely enjoyed the research journey, though, like everything, it was challenging at times. The uncovering, years of reading and analysis at the libraries and archives in St. Lucia, Trinidad, 2 months in the archives in London, and several interviews across St. Lucia, Castries, Monrepo, Library, among others. I could say that the Patrick and Melissa at the archives in St. Lucia had like family at this point. So I am eternally grateful also to everyone who shared their stories. The oral history was a critical part of the research. So these interviews that I did across Ireland, I found them to be extremely important, particularly in post-colonial nations like ours, where the records are very much a focused on the work and observations of officials. So due to that, in order to understand the grassroots experience, these interviews were critically important. And I do believe that I'll take a moment to say that we must engage with that oral history, must put more effort into keeping these records, because we have lost so far. Most of the persons I interviewed for this book are no longer with us. So we need to make some effort towards preserving our oral history if we are really going to learn and maintain the story for our next generation. So this is the story that I share. Speaking of standing on the shoulders of persons, my process included reading earlier works on the peasantry. I went as far back as our very own Sir Arthur Lewis's 1936 paper on the peasantry, and the work of other scholars who I make reference to in the book. So I will not go into all of that due to our time limit. My hope is that this book serves as reference material, both in terms of the main content and in terms of the citations, which I found to be a repository in itself. I uncovered so much about the fall of the sugar industry and the rise and fall of cocoa, lime, coconut, and the early banana industries. As Raisa mentioned, I presented sections of my work across the region and the world, and I thought that this nagging voice to share these findings about St. Lucia would be silenced. But they were not, unfortunately. I kept getting reminders that this was not enough. Calls from students, researchers, and friends to email the work, and of course, that one MPhil student who walked up the hill in Monrepo many years ago. I don't know if I could say the name. These were occasionally followed by the suggestion that I should publish. I saw the value of this because in the midst was the story of our people. The landholders, the farmers, the rural persons, the people I had relegated to the background in my earlier presentations, as I had focused more on what the export data was saying to me. Their story kept screaming out to me. After a while, I honestly would joke and say that I was holding a story hostage. Their voices had not been sufficiently heard in their time. Their contributions to our economy needed greater recognition. I told myself that if I am to write this book, I needed to work on centering them in the telling of our story. And the more I did, the more I realized that when we connect with our past in that way, we empower ourselves as St. Lucians. At various points of my own research, I felt an immense sense of pride because I now knew what they had built. I had the data. In preparing to write the book, I needed to do more. I went all the way back to that time right after emancipation to better understand how and why they did it. This is where the book begins. Chapter 1, From Emancipation to the Peasantry. There I found a people who had sought their version of real freedom from the post-emancipation era. I found their story inspiring in so many ways, and I felt an immense sense of pride, as I said, among other emotions. For starters, When one speaks of choosing to either stare at the doors that are closed in your face, as opposed to utilizing your time and energy to find another opening, I saw this in the story of the peasantry. In the 1830s and the decades that followed, they could have stared at the closed doors of legislation and taxation, which limited their options in earning independently, and obstacles in owning land, along with a lack of funding and other resources. But instead, they chose to focus on the openings that came in the form of the sugar crisis, the métayage system, kudme, susu, market day, door-to-door sales, friendly societies, and the rise of new industries like the cocoa, limes, coconut, and eventually bananas. Only a few years after the end of enslavement, they started buying and renting land and selling sugar to the remaining sugar factories that were responsible for extending the life of the industry. Then, being at the forefront of building the cocoa industry by 1894. By the 1900s, they owned considerable areas of land and were at the forefront of these industries while also producing to feed the nation. And so when you have persons owning such considerable areas of land, you understand why Sir Arthur said, the point at which a peasant stopped being a peasant is for another argument. So I noted that in so many ways, they were us and we are still them. So let me say this properly because this is our story. I looked at how we acquired land, how we implemented various cooperative systems, how we were determined to navigate an export industry which was worthwhile, but in so many ways it disadvantaged us. While I focused on their economic contribution, that's chapters 2 to 6, I could not ignore their impact on the social and political landscape of St. Lucia. In chapter 7, I took a moment to cover their efforts in advocating for better conditions for all and their determination to build their communities and a better St. Lucia for the next generation. So it was clear that they were thinking ahead. When they got together, whether it was through métayage or friendly societies, they sought to make things better. In 1938, 9,000 members wrote to the Moyne Commission, that is of one of the friendly societies, a few of the friendly societies, and they appealed for a free grant of an impracticable, or if impracticable, a loan, so if not a grant, a loan, at a small rate of interest to enable small planters to start planting. Beyond that, they appealed for better roads, marketing officers for produce, increased attention for land settlement, agricultural loans for banks and peasant proprietors, and free medical care for field laborers. So they thought not just of themselves, but other persons who they wanted to get the opportunities that they had. They were particularly concerned that the existing market conditions were not advantageous to the peasantry. We would have also known of a métayage association in Dennery who took to paying for school costs for children in the community. And so to put this in context, I looked at the story of a people who emerged from a horrific system that told them for hundreds of years that they were property, who was somehow not broken by that system and came out immediately working to build what would become the independent nation of St. Lucia in 1979. So sometimes we are so focused on finding individual heroes that we miss an opportunity to look at a collaborating group of persons who work together to achieve phenomenal things. They were heroes. I could not think of a more fitting title for the book than On the Shoulders of Peasants, although I used quotation marks because in the book, I also make a case for us to reconsider the use of the term in itself. When I speak of on their shoulders, it is two-pronged. On the one hand, they help to build the economy. And on the other hand, the bulk of the consequences that came with each collapsed industry fell on their shoulders. So it is critical for us to not only celebrate their contributions to building this economy, but to also recognize the sacrifices that they made in the process of nation building. And so we gather not just to launch a book, but to honor the resilience of a people, our resilience and their resilience, and to remember that our history is an anchor, one rooted in strength and national pride. I want to again thank Raisa and, of course, my sister who worked closely with her in fundraising, Tawana Mathre. And, of course, each and every one of you are here today because you saw the importance of us getting together to celebrate these unsung heroes. We gather not just, again, to launch a book, but to honor them and to honor our own resilience as a people. Thank you.
You can give the author another rousing round of applause for her contributions and research. This is truly an independent story that we have not told yet, and I'm hoping that more of St. Lucia's history gets featured in national celebrations. I'm winking at the CAB secretary slightly in the hope that history and culture also features a lot prominently, and we thank him for the opportunity to be part of this calendar and to share with the St. Lucian public more about our history. To do a symbolic unveiling, I want to invite the PS in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Bradley Saintonge, to come forward, who will help us to unwrap the book. And it's in banana leaf. Yes. So he will help the author. It's okay. You can leave it. He will help the author to unravel. Come to the front. Yes. Just to unravel it, to present to the public, because it is through their hard work that all of this has been made possible. Now, Fig 4, huh? Yes, yes. 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 So it's okay. A round of applause. We have unveiled on the shoulders of Peasants. The Ministry of Agriculture will be receiving their own complimentary copy of the book for their research and for their use for the people of St. Lucia. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I must also say that the offer has been, yeah, we'll give you your own special copy afterwards. That's signed. Yes. So we have hard copies and soft copies for our special recipients, which includes our ministries, our libraries. I must also say that the offer has been very generous in ensuring that the book is accessible to the St. Lucian people. She has already began donating to various institutions, including the St. Lucia National Archives Authority, the Vafo Comprehensive Secondary School, the Mikud Library, the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, and she will continue in the vein of contributing to other individuals. And we will be presenting shortly to the Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Jeremiah Norbert, who is her parliamentary rep and a supporter of today's initiative, Ms. Sally Roseman from the Ministry of Education, and Mrs. Catherine Octave Isaac. So we're going to ask these individuals to come forward so that they can receive their complimentary books. The offer will just present to them. No, you will not be getting yours in fig unless you want to. That's a special request. I had to, well, thank you to my mom for helping me wrap it at home. So, Mr. Roseman, you can go and come forth. Yes. Yes. We can do it as a group. Oh? Yes, we can do it. We can do it as a group. To make this special presentation, we do hope that these copies can be utilized for reflection, for planning, especially in the current age that we live in which food security is critical. We note that within CARICOM, we spend billions on importing, and we know that without the strength of our farmers and fisher folk, our countries would be poorer for it. Thank you so much, and we do hope that you enjoy your copies. Yes. Yes. At this time, I'm sure maybe members of the audience may want to make brief comments. I will welcome perhaps 3 to 4 comments or questions that you may have. I'll invite the offer to stand by me so that individuals who may want to come up to the mic to make a comment or two can come to do so. Yes, I see Mr. Nkrumah Lucian, who actually did a review for the book coming forth. He's also a teacher at the St. Mary's College. Welcome, Nkrumah.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I think it's a fantastic book, and well, I'm also a history teacher, social studies, so I have a question and a comment. One thing I value about the book is that it deepens our understanding of, how our society developed, which I think is much needed. And the point Raisa made earlier about studying the history and getting a general picture based on Jamaica, Trinidad, etc. So that's very much valued. One thing that occurred to me in reading, as we spoke about the book, is the issue of gender. Because I teach social studies, and one of the things that comes up is changing gender roles and the presentation of the male as the breadwinner, etc. And I always had some trouble with that because, my grandmother, who's 90 years old, lives in Barbados, still goes out to sell. And I was wondering about whether there's a class aspect to that idea of gender role and the idea that it is changing, as opposed to, we look at other sectors of society where the idea of the male just being the breadwinner, how true is that? And I think in terms of what you were studying, it may shed some light in that area and maybe somewhere that needs deeper study too.
Yes, it's interesting that you brought this up because only yesterday I spoke to another person who read the book and they were asking more, they wanted more detail about gender roles. Now, I did not go into that level of detail in terms of whether persons executing some of the activities were male, female, what household, but that is an idea that's possibly coming for another book because it's something that I'm very interested in learning more about. And even from the oral history, what they say to us, you see how active both parties were in various ways. So it would be interesting to learn whether that was differentiated based on class and so on. Yeah. But thank you for your insights and thank you for reading.
Do you have another comment?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm also an educator at South Louis Community College. I teach communications, and ironically today they were doing speeches. It's a speech course that I teach regarding what is the solution. That was the prompt for the speech, and a lot of them gave reference to this nebulous idea of solution values. So I gave them a follow-up question and asked them to articulate specifically what are solution values. Then they struggled with that, and we had a bit of a conversation in class about what we could all agree on as a class were those values. For me, when I read the book, what stood out to me was the value of cooperation, that it was essential to our success as a nation, that commitment to each other. And so that stood out to me. I wanted to know from you if there was any other values that you would highlight from your research, other than cooperation, because that's the big one that I took away.
Yeah. I would say none more than cooperation. None more than it. I was surprised at how many ways in which we were able to overcome obstacles and do what seemed to be almost impossible due to the fact that we were coming together in various ways to cooperate, including Kudme, which is Rice's area of specialty, and friendly societies, which grew exponentially in St. Lucia at a particular point, like from the 1900s. And so from the example I gave you, saw how they were not only coming together to finance themselves or to provide labor to themselves, to each other, but they were also advocating for better conditions for others. So I cannot say that there was any value that kept coming at me a lot more than what you mentioned, which is cooperation. But I also, I'm not sure if you would call it a value, but I did see this idea of that's resilience. I saw that a lot in terms of, okay, we failed here. All of our crops have rotted in that industry and they've closed down the lime industry. We're shifting to what's next? What else could we do? How could we redirect ourselves? And so that resilience, I saw it quite often throughout so perhaps that too, given that we bounced back from 2 major fires in our capital city, and maybe St. Lucians have this value of being resilient in ourselves. So yeah.
Perhaps innovation,
Sorry?
Hard work.
Yes, yeah. Yes, hard work, I saw that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. At this time, we have a special closing performance by a very talented young lady who is none other than Miss Cyan Serie, who's also the author's daughter. So we're going to give her a round of applause as she comes up for us. And she will be doing a presentation on Damn Proud Lucian. There's no issues, you know? You never want to get...
C'est incroyable. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. With all the wonders in the world, St. Lucia's only meant for me. So much history to be told and so much more for us. The colors feel the love, I can tell you all the way. Proud of it, proud of it. C'est incroyable. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. With all the wonders in the world, St. Lucia's only meant for me. So much history to be told and so much more for us. The colors feel the love, I can tell you all the way. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. It don't matter where I voyage, it don't matter where I roam. Majestic beacon standing tall, they're guiding me back home. Raise your flags, the skies above, I can tell you all the way. Proud of it, proud of it, proud of it. So I could go up forever, there to feel all the vibes and break away. I could take a trip to link up with friends and family. To my land of birth, to the place I love. The island in the sun could ever replace you in my heart. And if I ever plan to leave, I gon' tell you from the start. To my land of birth, to the place I love. Put up your online, sing out the song. I am a down proud Lucian, represent the land where you from. I am a down proud Lucian, from St. Lucian, and I will raise the flag till I die. Represent the land where you from. I am a town proud Lucian, from St. Lucian, and I will raise the flag till I die. Moving forward all together, we are strong for we are one. We can't deny this heritage, we rooted to this land. Let me see your hand, I know every St. Lucian. I would never tread with unashamed of this land. I get homesick, I can't stay away too long. Can't even love a vibe, Rosie late Friday night. So I could go up forever there to feel all the vibes and break away. I could take a trip to link up with friends and family. To my land of birth, to the place I love. The island in the sun could ever replace you in my heart. And if I ever plan to leave, I gon' tell you from the start. To my land of birth, to the place I
So we've come to the part of the program where we must say, messy appeal. Thank you very much to those individuals who made today possible, among them the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Jeremiah Norbert, the National Independence Committee, GISNTN for allowing us to use this venue, the National Archives Authority of St. Lucia. The photos that you saw on screen repeated was found at the archives, another rich repository that we must value in St. Lucia, Lucilec, Steady Auto, Wax Leathers, Southwell Stores, and Eagle Freight. I must also encourage, as we close, we give you a sample of some of the nourishment that you can get in the book, but the full meal, you need to get the book to actually acquire it. And I also need to say, important pour nous buy pour library set nisi. You must support libraries. Et puis tout le monde qui a fait l'histoire set nisi pour qu'à matcher écrivain, nous ni pour supporter you. So we must continue to support writers and researchers in St. Lucia that are helping us to develop and learn more about ourselves. 47 years in the life of a nation is still very young. And it's important that we are very intentional about what we share with our people, young and old, about themselves. It has been a pleasure being your director of proceedings today. And we encourage you to remember that we are standing on the shoulders of peasants. The closing frame that you will see will provide you with further information on the author, links to questions that you may have, and where you can actually purchase the book in St. Lucia. Merci à Pile Saint-Nici, bonne indépendance.
The peasantry in St.